everyone, and welcome to the Dyl Pickle Movie Network. I am Dylan Randazzo, and welcome to my continued New York Film Festival 62 coverage here on the channel. And I'm very excited to talk about this film because there are some films that just hit you right away. They're great films. There are some films that hit you right away, and the other end, they are bad films. You leave, you say, I didn't like that. Then there are those films that the minute they end, you say, that was it? And then seconds after you go, whoa, that was brilliant. And then minutes later, you hear the filmmaker talk about it and you're like, whoa, that was amazing. And that's kind of the journey and the trip I went on with Mike Leigh's newest film, Hard Truths. Now, I have a very kind of embarrassing confession to make, and I'm going to kind of lean into the microphone and whisper it so I don't have to say it too loudly, but I had never seen a Mike Leigh film before until this one. But I will say, as my first Mike Leigh experience, it really is such a fascinating new lens to cinema that I've never seen before. Now, I know, again, I confessed my truth on this microphone. I whispered it, but I said what I said. And a lot of people looked at me like, you've never seen a Mike Leigh film. But I think having never seen a Mike Leigh film, I think Hard Truths is just a very fascinating one to start with because I really have no other comparisons to make to any of his other work. But I have every other film I've ever seen in my life to compare to this one. And this is unlike any other film I've seen in my life. And I think it's because Mike Leigh has such a distinct, unique individual style. I would come up here normally and just tell you the plot of the film and what the basic premise is, but the whole thing about Mike Leigh's films is that there is no central premise. There is no one like storyline that his films really kind of embody, at least not in this case. He kind of focuses on what he wants the characters to be and who he wants cast in those characters. And he first decides to like establish the backstories first, and then he kind of just starts at point A and lets things just kind of evolve naturally. So he doesn't necessarily know what the next scene or next 2 or 3 or 4 scenes ahead are going to be. He has kind of an idea of what he wants to say in his work, but he doesn't necessarily know what the actual progression of events is going to be. And I think the film feels that way in a sense where you kind of wonder what this character is up to. It follows this character played by Marianne Jean-Baptiste, who is incredible in this role in this film, but it follows her kind of everyday life, her family. She goes shopping, she interacts with family members. She's a very cranky woman. She is very pissed off at pretty much everything and anything in existence. Every little thing that's said, she has something to combat it with. She's very snarky, she's a little sarcastic at times, but also very just, she's over it, and you don't really know why she's over it. And the fun thing about the film is that I feel like you are exploring the film and you are finding these revelations and kind of coming to your own conclusions as the film progresses, and you're learning new things and layers about this character. But it's also while these actors and this director are finding those same layers to this character. And I find that very fascinating. The fact that when these actors started this project, they didn't know where the film was going to end up, yet they're able to just kind of live naturally in the circumstances and allow the progression of events to build naturally to where they finally come to this kind of fully realized, dark climax. And I really just thought it was so fascinating as someone who has just never seen a Mike Leigh film, just to be able to kind of live with these characters naturally, not feel like there was a beginning, middle, and end to hit. And I think the reason I was so underwhelmed when the film ended was because I, expect in any film for there to be a definitive conclusion. But I think because this way the Mike Leigh makes his films, I called him Mike Film. The way Mike Leigh makes his films, I think the way he constructs them, there wouldn't be an ending because he doesn't have a beginning. He doesn't have a middle. He's just letting events happen. So the ending of the story would have to end with all the characters dying, but because we don't want to see that, it just kind of ends at a natural ending point, but it doesn't feel like this definitive conclusion. But I think his whole point is that life continues on and life has existed before, and we are not just necessarily starting a story from the top and ending it at the end, but we are just kind of taking a chunk out of someone's life just as it's happening and letting you experience it on full display. And I think that's just so fascinating. Again, I can't really tell you much of the plot of Hard Truths. There are certain moments that hit where you're like, oh, this is what happened in this woman's life, or oh, this is what's happening in this couple's life and their relationship, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it's about one certain thing. But I love that about this film. I love that it is about all these different things, and in general just kind of about humanity itself and how we react to certain things like grief and loneliness and angst and depression and marital issues and familial issues and the disconnect between mother and son. I just think it's very fascinating, and I think this is going to be a film that is going to be alienating for some, especially as it ends and and you realize like, oh, what was that all building to? Because the whole thing is it's not building to anything. Mike Leigh doesn't have an ending in sight. It just ends when it ends. And I really, really like that. Now, what I will say is that this is, whether you like it or not, a tour de force performance from Marianne Jean-Baptiste. And I mentioned it earlier, but I'm going to kind of focus on it even deeper here, because if she does not get an Oscar nomination for this, then it just goes to show that this year is just so stacked, or the Academy didn't watch this movie.
Where do you think you're going?
For a walk.
People are going to accuse you of loitering with intent.
Because this is one of those performances that you watch it and it is just every little word she says, every inflection of her dialogue,
That fat baby.
every biting word she speaks,
Parading it around in the little outfit. Not dressed for the weather, nah, with pockets.
is just so gripping.
What's the baby got pockets for? What's it going to keep in its pocket?
And it's one of those performances that I think really just commands and anchors this film so successfully, to where the film doesn't kind of hit these exciting heights that other films do, but because she is giving such a nuanced, amazing, emotional performance, you are 100% there with it every step of the way. And I was talking about Oh Canada in my last review and how it was one of the shortest films of the festival, but it felt like one of the longest. This is one of the shortest films of the festival that feels like one of the shortest films of the festival. Not to say that it's shortchanged or it doesn't fulfill expectation or it feels short-lived. It is, but effectively. But I think it's because the pacing is so good, because Marianne Jean-Baptiste's performance is so good, and it keeps everything moving like a firecracker. She's quite literally a firecracker in every single scene.
Look at you. Fix your face. You're dealing with the public, handling people's food.
Stop!
You can pipe down and all standing there like an ostrich.
And the moment when she's not, when she kind of sits back and lets the silence kind of marinate,
I just want it to all stop.
it adds a great dramatic effect because she's been firing a mile a minute the entire time.
Sister, call me.
Who?
Chantel.
I know who my sister is, thank you very much.
I think this is one of those just dynamite performances, and this film is being distributed by Bleecker Street, so I hope they get the right eyes on it. Bleecker Street has been like notorious for like not campaigning their movies well for Oscars, but I really hope they do for this one, because it is one of the best performances and a really fascinating screenplay. Again, he has to kind of create the script as he goes, and I think that makes for an even more difficult task and a more impressive task. The way you're able to kind of evolve these character stories naturally and not necessarily knowing what the next chapter will be, just kind of writing the next scene, just hoping for the best. And I really, really like that. I think also from a technical standpoint, it's also very impressive, because also you have to use your space well, because obviously planning a movie is difficult, because you need to know, okay, I'm filming this scene in this location, this scene in this location, and you have to kind of really meticulously plan out your method of shooting. But for a film like this, where you're kind of discovering the film as it goes along and learning what the film is as you film it, you know, he doesn't have that luxury of being like, okay, so the last scene is going to take place in this house, so we need this house on September 15th. You can't do that. You know, you have to just kind of use what your set is and try to formulate the story around it. It's just kind of a very fun exercise in filmmaking that, again, I've never seen before, because I've never seen a Mike Leigh film, and I believe this is his approach to most of his works. And I'm very excited to see all his other films, especially Secrets and Lies, which also stars Marianne Jean-Baptiste. It's what got her the Oscar nomination alongside Mike Leigh for that film. So there are just so many films I need to check out of his. Naked, Mr. Turner. I love Mike Leigh, and hearing him speak at the Q&A too, I like him even more. He, you know, had this great kind of quote before the film started where he was like, I'm not going to tell you what the film is, because I think you need to experience it for yourself. Well, who am I to tell you and spoil the film for you? Which is exactly what Pedro Almodovar did for The Room Next Door, but I digress. He's just such a delightful human being, and just seeing this cast and just, you know, getting to experience this film and just revel in it and just kind of immerse myself in something I've never seen before. It was quite stunning. So I definitely recommend Hard Truths. Again, it's a film I didn't like at the very final beat of the movie, because I felt like I was, you know, waiting for it to build to something, but then thinking about it in just mere seconds after it ended, and then hearing the Q&A and hearing him talk about his process and the way he structures his film so unconventionally, it really made me appreciate the art form in general, and just appreciate the fact that we can do different things with films. We don't have to fit a certain mold all the time, and we can kind of be a little bit looser and more interpretive. And yes, there are some bad examples of that where it almost feels like it needs some restraint. It needs to be reined in a bit, but this film doesn't. I think it's because he's such a master of his craft in both the written and the direction aspects. So I do recommend Hard Truths. Go see it. If you have seen it already, let me know in the comments what you thought of it, and stay tuned for more. I got a few more reviews coming for New York Film Festival 62. I'm going to do a ranking of all the films I saw and do an updated Oscar predictions once Wicked and Gladiator come out, to officially give my thoughts on what I think the Oscar picture is shaping up to be, having not done Oscar predictions since before the festivals even started. So there's been a lot of time, a lot of shifting, a lot of things growing, a lot of things falling off. And God, I hope Marianne Jean-Baptiste is in there for that Best Actress 5. I think she'll get the BAFTA nomination, but I really, really hope she gets that Oscar one as well. But thank you for watching this review. Like, subscribe for more, and stay tuned. Thanks for watching.